In three, two, and one. What's going on, everyone? This is the My Aggie Nation Podcast. I'm Travis Brown with the Eagle. Over there, also from the Eagle, Alex Miller. Alex, what's going on?
Not a lot. It's my mom's birthday.
Well, good.
Oh, hey.
And my stepdad. They share the same birthday, actually.
There you go.
Like
So
same
happy
year and
birthday.
everything.
Huh? No. I think my
Okay.
stepdad's 4 years older than her.
Okay.
Or maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
I thought you were just going to wave on a podcast, and I was about to say that's not how this works, Alex.
Hey, Mom.
So we have the video version.
And also, the other voice you heard, of course, is WTAW Zach Taylor.
Howdy, kids. How's it going?
What are you sipping on over there?
I don't know. It's my secret sauce and my chicken express cup, my chicken e cup.
It's pickle
sweet
juice.
Secret sauce. Secret sauce that looks a lot like DP.
Oh, okay. Well, some stuff happened this week. It was A&M got fined $100,000, so that was something.
Why'd they get fined $100,000, Travis?
Alex, that's because they beat Alabama, number one Alabama, and the crowd rushed the field. There was a pitch invasion.
Oh, were there people like jumping over the sides and stuff and running into people?
Yeah, I'm running and
that
taking.
sounds dangerous.
And one girl got trucked by a security guard trying to get Nick Saban off the field.
Yeah, and people were cadets were trading hats and helmets and jerseys. It appeared about that for this Missouri game, which is what we're about to talk about. I think what happened and what we should expect after that Alabama postgame celebration is half of the core is going to suit up for A&M this weekend, and then A&M, the players, are going to be in the stands in core uniforms because they swapped, they switched things.
Yeah, well, if that's the case, A&M might come out with an L this week.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Anyway, so Zach, I mean, a lot to do. That was one of the things that Alex and I were talking about heading back up to the press box after the game is. There was too many storylines in that game. There was too much going on after that game to grasp. What of all of the many storylines was the one that stuck out to you the most?
I think probably the biggest one, and this is looking at it from the big picture, right? This isn't going into all the intricacies that were part of the game. The fact that it was the first time that A&M had beat the number one team at home since 2002. Because there have been plenty of times they played the number one team in the nation at home at Kyle Field. And that was a real big mark against not just Kevin Sumlin, but you could go all the way back to Dennis Franchione when they beat Oklahoma. I mean, look at all the other instances in which they lost big time games at home. The fact that A&M not only was able to get that win, but they were able to get it at home at Kyle Field in front of a huge crowd, everybody going nuts over it. Obviously, a lot of recruits being in town. I think just the fact that they were able to knock off the number one team in College Station was the big storyline if you're looking at it from the big picture.
Alex, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, going off of Zach's thing, I think the question now is, will this win for A&M amount to anything? Because, okay, it's one thing to beat the number one team, but A&M's already got 2 losses. And so, talking with Cease afterward, at the end of the season, are we going to look back and say, well, it was just a mediocre season, but they beat Alabama? Or are they going to use this to springboard to the rest of the season and try and make a run at another New Year's Six Bowl?
Y'all are so boring. There was Jimbo first assistant to beat the master. There was Jalen Weidemeyer having a big game after having a big game against Alabama 2 years ago. There was Zach. Mine, it was, of course, because I went with my story, and it was Zach Calzada and the turnaround he's had in that game. And I guess dovetailing a little bit off what Alex was saying is if Zach Calzada is going to be that next big quarterback thing, or if it's going to be a one and done remembrance to chalk up his legacy. Alex, you have a question?
Okay, one thing off of that, I had somebody send me something, and I don't know where this is from or who wrote it, but
it's good journalism.
That is great journalism. Yeah. So
Inside
to whoever
sources.
this is, I give you credit. But I saw something that said how it was interesting on the 100th anniversary of the 12th man. There was a 12th man moment in that fourth quarter when Calzada went out of the game. It was uncertain if he would return. And Blake Boast is getting warmed up on the sideline, although I don't know if he actually got to throw a pass because everybody came patting his back, telling him to get warmed up. Boast didn't actually go into the game, of course. Calzada came back and finished the job, but it was kind of interesting seeing that parallel of 100 years later, there was kind of that 12th man moment in a really big game.
He did actually throw some warm-up passes because I know we were both on the field at the end of the game. I ran over to the A&M side to see if I could get a glimpse at what was going on with Calzada. And the only thing I could see, because I couldn't even really see the tent or anything, was Blake Boast warming up on the sideline. I got a little video put on Twitter, and then by the time it posted, they showed Zach Calzada on the Jumbotron about to head out onto the field, and well, here we go. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. You know, that picture that our great photographer Michael Miller got of Zach Calzada in the cadet hat. I mean, doesn't that look like one that in about 50 years when you're walking through the A&M hotel, it's going to be made into wallpaper on the side of the sports bar or something like that? That had that kind of look to it.
Yeah, I mean, what a great photo. I mean, that really just encapsulated the moment, you know. And what a week for Zach Calzada to think about playing against Mississippi State. They had a chance to win the game. They had the ball. He gets sacked in the end zone for the game-sealing safety, goes and hands out donuts 2 days later, receives criticism from students, which honestly would probably have been expected. And then that Saturday, I mean, how many times do they chant Calzada, Calzada? I mean, and as loud
more
as
times than the bird.
Yeah, more honestly. But
that's high praise.
But seriously, as loud as Cowfield was on Saturday, someone told me the loudest they thought that they heard the stadium was when Calzada went back in the game for that final drive. And so for him, and you know, Jimbo talked a lot about the mental health of players after the game. He talked about it on Monday. For Calzada to have the mental bandwidth to overcome the last 2 weeks and go out and have the performance he did, and to see A&M fans kind of rally around him, I mean, that was just honestly remarkable in itself.
Yeah,
and another part of that too, I think, is when you looked at A&M, especially in that third quarter and even midway through the fourth quarter, when the offense was basically doing nothing. I mean, it really did come to a standstill. And everybody, I think, was kind of thinking, all right, here we go again. A&M's going to revert back. Calzada is now going to have to be playing from behind, especially when Alabama took that lead. And you're kind of at that point thinking, well, this one's pretty much over. You know, A&M gave it a good fight, but there's no way they're going to be able to play from behind in this situation. The fact that he was able to rally the team and not only lead them to the tying drive, which they had to score a touchdown, but also leading them down the field and then able to kick the game-winning field goal. So, Travis, like you said, there are so many storylines to this. Obviously, Jimbo Fisher getting the better of his former boss. That is huge. But the fact that Zach Calzada was able to overcome a lot of these things that he's been undergoing, and we've heard it from the players, right? We've heard it from Jimbo Fisher. Practice, I mean, we have faith in this guy. He's really, really good. You just hadn't seen that necessarily translate to the field yet. And he was able to do that Saturday. As you said earlier, Travis, the big question is, was this a playing above their grade moment for A&M, or is this going to be a turning point in the season? Is it a fluke or a turning point? That's the big question, and we'll find that out this weekend.
I think it was pretty obvious with Calzada. There's been some nerves in play the last couple of weeks, and nerves then translates into bad fundamentals, because it was pretty obvious in the Arkansas game. For most of it, there was definitely times in the Mississippi State game that when the game was moving a little too fast for Calzada and things were getting nervous, his feet were all over the place. And it's hard to make accurate, good passes when you're dancing like, you know, the Looney Tunes, someone's shooting at your feet in the saloon.
So I real quick, don't mean to interrupt you, but I went back and watched some of the highlights. Obviously, we were there watching it in person. He was doing that on passes he was making as well. So I don't know if that's just a thing that is Zach's deal. Like he just is back there and is kind of stomping on the ground like he's mad at it. I don't know. But he was able, and I'm not saying it wasn't nerves, but he was somehow able to overcome that, because some of the big passes he made in the fourth quarter, he was doing that exact same thing.
Well, and I was about to say, I was watching it up until about really when those drives stalled out, and he actually did have pretty good discipline with his feet. He was setting his feet, making good throws through halftime. He went 10 for 10 in halftime. A good chunk of those throws, he was keeping good feet. It was really when that thing started, the drive started to stall out, that he was getting a little bit of that happy feet. The throw that he had to Anaya Smith for the touchdown, granted, there was a guy all up in his grill and would ultimately put a helmet into his knee. But he was throwing off his heels on that one too. That just happened to be it's easier to throw a fade like that necessarily than it is anything else. And Smith was pretty wide open. So just go out and get the ball. But that being said, when he was rolling, the feet were calm. And I think that's going to be a good indication moving forward of necessarily how Zach's gonna cope into the game is keeping an eye on his feet.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's part of it too. There's so many different parts that are going along with being the quarterback, right? Not only are you having to look at the defense and see what the defense is giving you, you have to get the right play call in. Your mechanics have to be correct. And we've been to practice. We've seen how much Jimbo Fisher hones in on mechanics for his QBs. He will sit there, he'll work them through it. And I'm sure that's something that they've talked about as well. Every quarterback's going to be a little different, right? I mean, you're not expecting every guy to have that cookie cutter, same drop back, same arm motion, everything that goes along with it. But, and I have no doubt that there were some nerves. Even being at home, you're playing against number 1 Alabama. You're playing fantastic. Suddenly you're down, and for him to be able to rally the offense that way and to make some really good passes was a tremendous effort by him.
So what you're trying to say is, in quarterback preparation, gone are the days of the trash cans with the holes in them.
Things have changed.
The old Mazzoni days, the Dr. Pepper winter-free scholarship quarterback practice.
Well, everybody knows the shovel pass is the best way to do that.
Anyway. You're right. So the other thing we would be remiss to talk about is the improvement in the offensive line. Of course, Kenyon Green pops out to left tackle, where kind of a lot of us thought he might be, for the most part, before fall camp really started. You had Blake Traynor, you had Bryce Foster, you had Layden Robinson, and then you had Ruben Fothery on that line for the good majority of the game, because Jameer Johnson violated team rules and wasn't available for the game. That seems to be the combination moving forward. I know we're all offensive line experts on this podcast, but why are they successful?
It seems as if the guys that they have are finally in the places they need to be. I mean, Kenyon Green, it's just been a total musical chairs game the whole season. And, Kenyon Green, I think, has played every single position except center at some point. Because Bryce Foster's manned that the whole year. He seems to have started figuring things out. He's shown really good glimpses throughout the early season, but at times has played like a freshman. But with Ruben Fothery, it seems like he's really come in and been comfortable at that right tackle spot. It was no question that Layden Robinson was going to be one of the guys they leaned on filling into one of those guard spots. And then I think the biggest thing is Blake Traynor, because, with Ike Agumbi out for a second straight week, Traynor struggled when he got the start a couple games back and did not look that great.
He was at right.
He was at right tackle, and now moving into guard. Like you said, I'm not an offensive line expert, but there is a difference between playing guard and tackle and having to protect someone off the edge. And how many times has Alabama got a first-round draft pick coming off the edge? We'll see if this is the combination that sticks. Agumbi, we don't know when he'll be back, but if he comes back, does he fill in one of those two spots? If I was a betting man, I'd maybe say Traynor, but Traynor played great. So, we'll see. But yeah, certainly that was a huge deal for A&M, finally getting some consistency and Calzada not being frazzled back there against a really good defense.
Yeah. The fact that they were able to not only just give him a pocket, but also open up lanes in the run game. A&M didn't have just an overwhelming game on the ground, but they did have a pretty solid one, especially given the kind of defense they were going up against. You get 100+ yards against Bama. I think you're pretty happy with that. Uh, what do you do when Jameer Johnson's coming back? I mean, that's a guy that, he is the veteran on that offensive line, right? I mean, you got a graduate transfer was playing left tackle for you. I mean, is he now the odd man out in that rotation? As you mentioned, Trainer, gosh, I mean, he did not look good at all against New Mexico. New Mexico, he was getting blown off the line. But this game against Alabama, he's able to hold his own. And I think it's a combination of a lot of things. The fact that we know what a good center or a center that is able to command the offense and figure things out can do for an offensive line. I think you've seen it when Eric McCoy left, and then you had that transition that one year, and things were kind of discombobulated on the O-line. Then Ryan McCollum gets healthy, and he's able to kind of lead things there. I think Bryce Foster, as he works his way in, is starting to get the hang of things. Now, I'm not saying that he's going to be all-world center this season, but I think he's going to be very serviceable, and moving forward, I think he's going to be great. Ruben Fothery, the same way. I mean, you talk about those are two true freshmen going up against SEC defensive linemen and are able to hold their own, not only hold their own, but have a lot of success. And everyone knew that the offensive line is going to be young, inexperienced, but talented. I think you're starting to see that talent start to show up because they're starting to get it from perspective from a college standpoint, from a college player standpoint. Now, can they keep that going? And yeah, my big question is, where does Jameer Johnson fit in all this? Because what are you going to say? Okay, well, Blake Trainer made the most of his opportunity. This combination that we had beat the number one team in the country. Now we're going to change that up again. I don't know if that's the smart play. I think you keep going with it until they prove you wrong.
I agree. And I think that another thing to factor into that is the fact that Jameer Johnson's a graduate transfer. If you can get some younger guys in there that are flowing and getting continuity, let them have the playing time, because Jameer Johnson's going to be a one and done for them, and hasn't necessarily proven that he's always the best option, especially with in the regards to taking a lot of penalties too. He has not necessarily been disciplined on the line there. So yeah, I wouldn't think that he would be slotted right back in unless so the guys ahead of him start showing that things are breaking down again. I would, however, think you would see Aki Agumbi go back in for Blake Trainer. Not that Trainer, like you said, didn't do a good job, but Agumbi has been pretty solid through the season. And I don't think anything that has been unsuccessful on that offensive line necessarily can point directly back to him. So that'll be interesting to see. So I know we're going to get into a lot of what's going on with Missouri in this Missouri game in the next segment, but is A&M going to run all over the Tigers this weekend? One of the worst run defenses in the country is the Missouri Tigers. Is this going to be that breakout game that Isaiah Spiller and Devon Achane have kind of everyone's kind of been yearning for from them?
I think so. I think you're going to see a steady dose of number 6 and number 28. Now, you want Zach Calzada, after a great performance, you want him to build on that, right? So you're not going to completely mark it off and say, well, we're just not going to throw the ball at all. I would still expect him to toss it around 20 plus times this game. But knowing the matchups that you have, knowing how well the strength of this offense, I don't think anybody can argue, has been the running backs. You've got two guys that could play, I think, anywhere in the country. So absolutely, you give them the ball and you say, all right, if you can stop us, that's fine. And it plays right into what Jimbo Fisher wants to do, and that's to eat up the clock. He wants to eat up the clock. He wants to keep the other team's offense off the field, and he wants to control the ball game. And he can do that with the run game, and I think he can do that against Missouri.
Yeah, I think it's a perfectly good game to work that play action pass game. If they get the success that everyone is expecting in the run game, yes, there's going to be instances where you want to be balanced, but you use that play action pass game. I mean, going back to that Anaya Smith touchdown early in the game where they ran it, I think 6 straight times to set up that one play action pass. And Anaya Smith was wide open in the end zone because everyone crashed down in on the possible run. I think that should be a pretty good game, pretty good blueprint of how to beat this Missouri team.
Yeah, I think you guys nailed it. And I think it's going to look very similar to some of the games that we saw A&M win last year, where it's methodical. it's slow. They lean on the legs of their running backs, especially if the offensive line can kind of replicate a performance like they did last week. And with Jalen Watermeyer having the game that he did last Saturday, Travis nailed it. If you run 4 or 5 times, and then Missouri, the biggest thing's going to need to be being disciplined, especially with some injuries that they've got in the secondary. I mean, you give Spiller and a chain the ball, get 8, 10, 12 yards, 3 plays in a row, get into territory, and then Calzada pops one over the middle. I mean, how many times have we seen Jalen Watermeyer just catch like a 10 or 15-yard pass across the middle? Or, A&M's got those plays where they got the outside receivers just cutting those long crossing routes all the way across the field. I see it as a game where maybe A&M doesn't hit a bunch of home run balls, but they steadily move the ball. And if there's a time of need, they'll go to the legs of a guy like Isaiah Spiller, who has shown that when A&M needs him, he can produce the yardage on the ground.
I mean, there really isn't a reason to unless they are just completely putting 11 guys in the box and A&M starts to struggle running the ball. I mean, they are literally 130th in the nation in run defense. That is last place. They're averaging 287.2 yards per game rushing against them. If there is going to be a home run pass, it's because they ran play action and, Demas or Anaya Smith or someone like that is just past the secondary and you can drop one in there. I just don't, to win the turnover battle, keep it simple in this one. I don't see why you have a bye week next week. That's another week to get guys some more reps, get them flow, get them confident. No reason to overthink this one. Just run the ball right up their gut and win the ball game.
Yeah,
what are you laughing at down there?
I was just gonna see. I was waiting for what kind of word you were going to use or what body part you were going to use there. I thought we were going to take a break and then talk about Mizzou when we came back. We're like breaking down the game here in the first segment still.
Oh, we're doing that. We're breaking down the game. We have Zach. We have a guest in the second segment.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
And the guest is
Dave Matter from St.
Louis. So
there you go, St. Louis.
We're gonna do that. Let's spin it around here on predictions. Alex, what's the spread?
Oh gosh, I think it's like
9.5. 9.
9. Okay. Yep. I know the name of our podcast, and you can blame me for this. Last week was Will A&M cover against Alabama? They did. They sure did.
They did.
Will Missouri cover against A&M this week? What's your prediction?
I say no. Missouri, they just haven't been very competitive this year, and that's surprising. Before this season, this was a game that you looked at and was like, oh wow, like this could be a real trap game. I mean, Missouri's schedule was pretty favorable in the front half of the year, and they just haven't come out and played like people thought they would. And I think a lot of that has to do with their defense and what's gone on. But I mean, they lost by a touchdown to Kentucky, Kentucky's having a season of all seasons up there in Lexington. But I mean, they got blown out by Tennessee. They lost to Boston College. I mean, they only beat North Texas by 13. So I say A&M covers.
Zach?
Yeah, I don't see Missouri getting within 9 points of A&M. And you talk about the close game to Kentucky. I think Kentucky's good. A lot like Arkansas. I think they're going to be very exposed this week against Georgia. I think the Bulldogs have a way about them that tends to lean that way. I think Kentucky's offense is pretty one-sided too, especially with the run game. But yeah, Missouri has not been good this year. Losses to Boston College. They got blown out at home against Tennessee. As Alex mentioned, they beat UNT, but 48-35 was the final score there. And that run defense, you bring it up again. A&M has two of the best backs in the country, I think. I think a lot of people would agree with me. So I don't think that they're going to be able to stop that A&M run game. I think the Aggies are probably going to dominate time of possession and the score.
One underrated storyline that I was actually just kind of looking at all today was the storyline of one. And of course, I have to go back in saying that before I was down here at the Eagle covering the Aggies, I was covering TCU for the Fort Worth Star Telegram, and a recruit, big time recruit that I covered up there that started some time at TCU was quarterback Sean Robinson, who was a guy who got to play a little bit of time at quarterback at TCU before he transferred after his freshman season, ended up transferring up to Missouri. And now he's actually switched positions and is playing safety for the Tigers and is actually doing some pretty good things. He, as of course, my computer is messing with me here. At safety this year, he is, let's see, he's fifth on the team in tackles. He has 2 tackles for loss. He has an interception. He has a pass breakup. It's a guy that A&M had offered. Alabama had offered out of high school too. Texas had offered. A lot of Texas guys on that roster, but he's a kind of a surprising situation of a guy who left to try to get more time at quarterback and ended up transferring or transitioning to safety. Has been doing some pretty good things. So it's an interesting guy to look out for. That being said, yeah, A&M runs away with this one. I think that, not to say that A-Chain or Spiller haven't been great this year, because they have, and they haven't put up big stats, but there hasn't been necessarily that one game where they just took over and they were the reason that A&M won 100%. I think that that's going to be this game, one of those big, I don't know, say breakout games, but a game where everyone points back and say, hey, those two were dominant, and that's all that necessarily A&M needed in this one. Missouri does not cover. So that being said, move on to the next segment to break down the Missouri side of things, and that is with one. Alex, why don't you preview this guy?
Yeah, coming up next, we got Dave Matter. He works for the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, covering all things Missouri Tigers. Here's what Dave had to say about this weekend's matchup.